Somebody the other day said this hat looks silly. Well, I don't care. It's a floppy hat kind of day here. Full sun, hardly any clouds. It's going to be in the 80s. I haven't used the Wolfe splitter in weeks. I've got knee-high to waist-high grass all around it. I did manage to spend a little bit of time bucking up some wood the other day. Now we get to drag the splitter up there, split it before it gets too hot out here. Of course, right now the tractor needs to run its regen cycle. It has one of those DPF filters, which stands for dumb particulate filter or something. So every once in a while it needs to run at like wide open throttle for 15 minutes or so while it cleans itself out. And usually if you're doing something, it's not a big deal, but I was ready to turn the tractor off and start splitting some wood. So I'll walk around and show you what's going on in the wood yard while I'm waiting on that thing. And this is our parking area. We're going to be open in 6 weeks or so for our first flower picking season of the year. So what was my wintertime wood yard needs to get cleaned up. And I started the other day. I spent almost an entire day clearing from those yellow timbers that you can see over there to where the tractor is. I had a pile of wood, there was a bunch of debris, there was some leftover branches from Christmas tree season, just all the bark and odd cuts, and there's still a lot of it. I finally picked up a burn barrel. I've been talking about getting one for a long time, and I was able to start, burning some debris and cleaning up a little bit. But you can see there's still quite a bit here. So what I'm going to end up doing is kind of dedicating this corner of the parking lot for firewood stuff, and we'll leave this as the always messy part of the yard. We don't actually want to park cars here anyway because this is the drain field for the house down the hill. The rest of this, there's a few logs over there. I've got a little bit of hickory right there that I'm reserving for my barbecue customers. I've got 5 or 6 logs over here that are actually just a handful of leftovers from last season. And these logs here are pretty much all oak. There's maybe one maple log in there. But that's stuff that I can split and put on the pile, and I don't have to put it in the kiln. It'll be ready to sell this fall. The other stuff that I'm cycling through the kiln right now is the greener stuff that is going to take longer to dry out. Further up the parking area, this is where we were running the Halverson firewood processor. Showed you that in a couple videos. That processor actually needs to go back soon, and I'm not going to be able to use it much longer, but I actually was able to push through all of the smaller logs that I had available through that machine. And what I have over here is just a pile of resplits that needs to get done, and then all the debris needs to get cleaned up. This is also going to be part of our parking area. When this is all cleaned up and organized, we have room for at least 60 cars, and we need every bit of that when we're open and when we're busy. So part of it is graveled, part of it is not. So as long as the weather is fair, we'll be able to use it all. But when it gets muddy, we can't use the area over there because cars tear it up in a hurry. it took about 25 minutes to fill that crate up. Wasn't working too hard. Started with the 6-way wedge, switched to the 4-way wedge. I like the 4-way wedge particularly on the bigger blocks, because once you bust those bigger blocks up into quarters, you get a lot more control over how you split that wood up, and you can end up with a lot more square pieces like this, where if you use the 6-way wedge, if it's the appropriately sized wood and you get 6 perfect splits right from the gate, it works really well. But when it comes down to doing resplits, you end up with a lot more slash and small little kindling pieces, which isn't a terrible thing because you're getting more productivity, but I do like the control that you get. I do like this size, this shape piece of wood better, particularly for making my firewood bundles. Well, apparently tabletop fire pits are all the rage now. I've seen a bunch of other sellers, particularly online, not in my market, but other guys who do YouTube and other sellers online get into this tabletop fire pit wood market. And I don't really know how much opportunity there is in this market, but if nothing else, it's a good way to use some of the waste. You always end up with shortcuts at the end of some of these logs as you measure out your firewood pieces. I like my firewood to be a very consistent 16-inch length. That way I can package them all in bundles and they look nice and neat. Some people, don't ever end up with end cuts because they just will randomly kind of cut their length of wood between 16 and 20 inches and kind of make up the difference as they get towards the end of the log. But anyway, because of what I do and how I do it, I end up with a lot of odd shaped and odd sized end cuts, and some of which I burn myself, and some of it I sell as barbecue wood, and some of it I sell as seconds. But this is another way to use some of that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make a big bin of this today, and we'll get it drying out, and maybe we can sell some of it this summer. So I've got here 12 totes now that are filled up. I estimate about a quarter cord per tote when they're loosely thrown in like this. So 12 divided by 4, we've got about 3 cords of wood sitting here, which isn't too bad. I have 8 totes in the kiln. That's another 2 cords. And then I've got, I think, 3 or 4 more totes around that I can use that I can fill up. So another 3/4 of a cord. So anyway, when it's all said and done, if all my totes are full, I've got about, 5.5 or so cords of wood in the crates. I do also have these bladders that came in the crates, and some of them need to get cleaned out. They had mulch dye in it, but I'm thinking about using some of those for firewood storage, particularly for some of my odd cuts and things that, some of the lower value stuff, and maybe some of our own fire pit wood that we use in the wintertime. I can throw in some of those, but beyond that, then I need to get around to just stacking it again or putting it in a big pile to air dry. And I've got a couple cords of wood out in the field air drying currently, but that's what I need to get moving on if I want to sell more wood this year than I did last year. With what I have split up right now, if that's all that I sell, I'm not going to hit the goal. So I just walked around the yard and found 3 more little blocks, all about 5 to 6 inches long, actually all less than 6. And these are perfect. These are each oak, and we'll be able to split these up pretty quick. The only thing I am finding, it's a little tricky right here. There's not a lot of room to work between the wedge and the push block, and got to be really careful where your fingers are. Pretty easy to work through that stuff. Got over half a bin full. This cheap plastic bin, I don't think it's gonna hold that much more weight, so I'm not gonna put any more in here. But we'll go throw this in the kiln, get the stuff drying out. And since it's a gorgeous sunny day, let's check the temperature on the kiln while we're at it. I just checked the app, it's showing up, see if that makes out for you guys. 114 or so degrees right now in there, and we're about 1:30 in the afternoon currently, if that matters. So there's another couple hours of heating still going to happen. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we get upwards of 130 in there at the peak here today, but that's about where it tends to sit on a sunny day, especially today where there's a mix of sun and clouds. You know, 115, 120 is pretty normal. And if you research solar kilns in particular for the guys who do lumber, that's about where they tend to max out. We've had it as high as 148 on a bright sunny day with the wood stove also going, and that's as hot as I've gotten it. So we'll see later this week. We're actually going to have some considerably warmer temperatures. We'll see what happens then, but for now, sun's doing its thing, and I'm going to get back to splitting wood. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with me, guys. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.